The next bullet point, the next thing that the universities are wanting you to compose, the kind of music that they want you to compose, is the idea. What does that mean? Well, I've talked about this on my stream or on some fixed commentary videos on putting the idea over the actual aesthetics of your piece of art. So I use this kind of example that I came up with my head a long time ago, where maybe you're going into kind of a contemporary art exhibition, and let's say in the middle of the room you see this old tattered couch from the 1970s, and the idea is, oh well, that's to embody kind of like the domestic dilapidation, of domestic families in the 1970s, or like the overconsumption or consumerism, and how badly this impacts our society and culture. Interesting idea, but the old tattered couch is an old tattered couch. Like, I mean, maybe the artist, like cut it up with some scissors and stuff, but I mean that's incompetent art. Like anyone can do that. You don't need to be an artist to be able to, yeah, like people who have children know that children can destroy furniture or cats or dogs or whatever. So you don't need that kind of impotent art to display an idea. An idea is fine by itself, but the art has to be good. The art has to, the idea doesn't justify the art, if that makes sense. It can be a good idea, but it has to be executed well. It has to be competent art. It has to be art well done. An old tattered couch in the middle of an exhibition is not, it's not art. Or if it is art, if you want to call it art, it's bad art, okay? And I can say it's bad art. So this is quite true with student composition and that composition practice in the university setting, is where it's like, oh, I have an idea and I'm going to create a musical semblance of that idea. Now, that's actually a pretty good goal to have. I mean, there's this idea of creating a semblance of a story or a character or a poem or something like that, provided that it's well done. So you can have an art piece that represents an actual idea. I'm not against the semblance of an actual idea or the idea itself. It just has to be done well. So where does this play into the music composition practice of the contemporary art or the contemporary music in the university setting? Well, you have your idea, and this is just an example. You have your idea, and the structure and the moments in your musical narrative, if you have one, are dependent solely on that idea. So your idea in the way of music composition could be like a system or parameters, a list of parameters, or an algorithm, like a computer algorithm, and say, okay, I have this algorithm, I have this system, I have these list of parameters, and based on the parameters, whether it's mathematical or indeterministic or chance, aleatoric, I'm gonna put these parameters in this, algorithmic apparatus, and then whatever comes out, that's my music. It's a good exercise, but the output usually, at least in my experience with composing this kind of stuff and also hearing this kind of stuff among my peers, and then also the last 10 years, the output is kind of just either forgettable or just bad. And people don't care if it sounds bad. Like the teachers, the professors, and the students, they won't care if it sounds bad. They're like, well, that's part of the system. That's what it outputted. So therefore, that's part of the music composition. It's like, but it sounds bad, or it sounds pointless. I remember talking this. I was a graduate student in Milwaukee, and I told I told in front of the professor, in front of the class, I said, what was the point of this one little moment here? And they're like, objectively speaking, it's just a moment, I'm like, yeah, but what does that moment serve for the rest of the composition? And they say nothing, and that was fine with them. It was fine with the students. It was fine with the professor. And I thought, no, it sounds dumb. I guess to give you some perspective, there was a string quartet I was listening to. I can't even remember who played it or who composed it, but it was all this bowing motion. It was all this momentum with the bowing, and it was good. I mean, it had some good soundscapes, and then there was this one little doop, like little pluck doop, that the performers did, and it made no sense narratively speaking in the composition. I was like, why was that put in there? It's like, well, just an effect. It's like, well, how does it serve the rest of the composition? It doesn't need to serve the rest of the composition, Michelle. Why do you have to ask these questions? So I would ask these questions, like, what's the point of this? So, you know, whatever's outputted, regardless if it sounds bad or if it sounds pointless, it's part of the system. It's like, well, the composer, rather than compose, and I've done this, you know, I did this as a graduate student, I did this as an undergrad. I would compose not music, but I would compose a system. I would compose a system of rules and parameters, and whatever spat out, that was the music. And if you had a problem with that, well, you had a problem with the system that I made. So that's the idea for music composition, for contemporary music composition practice. It's just like, it doesn't have to make sense narratively. It can sound dumb. It can sound completely different from everything else in the music. It can sound pointless, but if it's part of that system, it's fine. It's just the way it is. So suck it up. The idea is more important than the art itself. Whereas I say, no, the idea must be second to the art. It must be second to ultimately that musical composition that you have.